Hey, macromolecules. So let's talk about the organization of living things. So we have organisms that we can break down into smaller parts to learn about. So the smallest part is the atom. Now we are starting here at macromolecules. All of this here is chemistry, physical science type stuff. So macromolecules, there are 4 of them that we'll be talking about. Now, they make up organelles, which make up cells. We'll be talking a lot about cells later in the semester. Now, cells make up tissues. When we have all of the same type of cells in an area, we call that tissue. So we have things like muscle tissue, brain tissue, skin tissue, and those things form together organs. So you might have muscle tissue and some epithelial or skin tissue that together makes up the stomach. Then we have the stomach that works together with organs like the liver and the small and large intestines. They make up the digestive system. Then we have many systems that make up the organism. Okay, and all of these systems work together to help the organism maintain stable body conditions. Okay, and these are things that we will talk about more as we go on. Now, let's start with carbon, because carbon is essential to life on Earth. It forms stable bonds with many elements, including itself. So it forms a huge variety of small to large and very complex molecules. Okay, one molecule here we have is glucose. Glucose is essentially sugar. It's a sugar that plants use for energy. Now, we have a picture on the left that shows the chemical structure of glucose. Okay, you can see the black is carbon, red is oxygen, white is hydrogen. Okay, those are elements that are bonded together to make glucose. The shorthand version to write this would look like this. Okay, the only thing we're missing here is the carbons. So any place where 2 lines meet represents where a carbon would be. So when you see this, you'd think, oh, there's not that much carbon in this molecule, but there is, because there are carbons in all of these intersections here. Okay, so macromolecules, they are large molecules. Macro means big. Okay, they're big molecules that are made up of smaller molecules. There are 4 types. We have carbohydrates, lipids, which are fats, proteins, and nucleic acids. Okay, elements. Now, cells are made up of primarily a few elements. That's carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. To shorten this, we can just call it SHNOPS. Each macromolecule contains some or all of those elements. There's the periodic table showing you where to find some of those elements. Now, monomers and polymers. Each macromolecule is made up of smaller molecules. We call those smaller molecules monomers. Mono means one, so it's like smaller, one. Okay, and then they are bonded together to create a polymer. Poly means many. Okay, so we have a monomer versus a polymer. Okay, you can think of monomers like individual pieces of Legos, where polymers would be the Legos stuck together. Polymer of 3 monomers, of 5 monomers. Okay. Now, a couple quick equations here. Dehydration. Synthesis is when water is removed as 2 monomers are joined together. So if we take water away from these molecules, you can see H2O, that's water. It joins them together and it makes a larger polymer. Dehydration, taking away water. Then we also have hydrolysis. It's the opposite. So if we add water to a large molecule, it's actually going to break down that polymer. Okay? This is easily seen with carbohydrates like simple sugars. Okay? If you have just normal sugar, it dissolves easily in water. Other molecules will only do this if they have special enzymes that help to break down and help that process. Okay. So let's start with our first macromolecule. We have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are your grains, your starches, and your sugars. The main elements are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that form carbohydrates. Okay? The body uses carbohydrates as fast fuel. Okay? It's a first source of energy for the body because very little energy is required to break down carbohydrates. So that's why some of your athletes are going to try to stock up on their carbohydrates, have a spaghetti dinner before their big game or meet. Okay, so our carbohydrates are sugar molecules. The monomer of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. Remember, mono means one. This is a simple sugar. Monosaccharides can bond together to create more complex sugars like disaccharides. Di means two, so that's two bonded monosaccharides. I know, a lot of crazy words here, but stick with me. A polysaccharide is when we have more than two monosaccharides bonded together. So here's the chemical structures of these crazy molecules I was just talking about. So a monosaccharide looks like this. It's glucose, which I showed you earlier. And a lot of these carbs have these ring structures, okay, where it's a ring. The disaccharide has two rings. Okay, di means two. Then polysaccharide has many rings. Okay, that's the structure, what it looks like. Okay, here you can see in the diet, we have our simple sugars here, which is anything with that good old cane sugar, and our starchy stuff. These are the complex sugars. They're more, well, the structure is more complex. There's more to it. Okay, here's that glucose molecule again, showing you the structure. And let's move on to proteins. When you think of proteins, you probably think of building muscle, and that has something to do with it, but proteins are so much more. They have a lot of functions in the body, and we're going to learn about them. So proteins, the elements that they are made up of are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and some of them have sulfur. Now, the monomer of a protein is amino acids. So these amino acids are bonded together in different combinations to create what we call a polypeptide chain. Okay, so here are different amino acids bonded together to form a polypeptide chain. So this is the polymer, right? And you might notice this word amino acid if you're someone who likes to go to the gym a lot, because amino acids are good to replenish your muscle health. Okay, now this polypeptide chain, it's going to fold in a certain way. Okay, like here's a way that it could fold. And this is now the protein. The protein has a different structure called a protein.